you had a refreshing break. And now for our final session of the day, we are joining by Suyog Ketkar, content designer at IBM and a TECOM certified award-winning technical writer. In this session, Suyog will guide us through the ethical challenges of using AI in technical documentation. From data privacy and bias to compliance and automation risks, he will share real world examples and responsible practices that empower writers to use AI both effectively and ethically. So please welcome Suyog Ketkar. Over to you, Suyog.
Thank you, Preeti. I hope I am audible. Am I?
Yes.
Awesome. Uh, can anyone please share their screen? Preeti, can you do that, please?
Yeah, Rahul, please share your screen.
I'll I'll be helping you with the slides, so you. This is
Sure.
Rahul. Yeah.
Is the screen visible?
No,
No.
Rahul, are you sharing the screen?
you can
Yeah,
see.
it's visible.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Awesome. See, we keep talking about AI and everything. I see the font has changed. I initially created the presentation in Canva, and after I exported it to PPTX, I see that the font has changed. Anyway, let's go ahead with the presentation. I really hope that everyone who went on a break is back. It's still 11:51, so it's safe to say morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the last session of this amazing two-day TWT AI conference. Uh, After this, we'll have the opportunity to listen to some of the most knowledgeable speakers here in the group. Until then, I am Suyog Ketkar. I work as a content designer at IBM, where I create user-centric documentation that enhances the user experience. I take care of my team's tech products. Today, I'm really excited to talk about responsible AI, where I'll cover the ethical challenges and considerations for us tech writers. As we dive deep into AI for everything, as you might have noticed from Puneet's session, we cover everything from drafting content for guides to generating multimedia documents and ideas. We are seeing incredible efficiency gains. Sometimes along this journey, we are also experiencing hidden pitfalls like biases that end up alienating our users. Sometimes we see compliance slips that might cost thousands of rupees. Through my presentation today, you will not only explore the theory, but also listen to some practical lessons on making AI our ally without compromising trust or accuracy at work. What I say, I sincerely hope will be in continuation of what our friend, I think it was Poonam who covered it yesterday in her session on day one of this conference. In the roughly 20-25 minutes, next, we'll resolve first some common assumptions about AI ethics. We'll then learn to unpack what I have now begun to call as my framework. It's an insightful framework, which is also a memorable acronym for you. And we'll wrap up with some actionable steps to integrate it so that you can integrate it in your workflows. By the end of it, I'm sure that you will have a simple checklist to elevate the quality of your documentation. Let's begin with debunking some assumptions here first. Next slide, please. Awesome. So the first one, AI handles everything. Um, it's tempting, but somehow it more seems like an oversight because it's like autopilot in a storm. If you are a pilot, you would want to not switch on the autopilot during a storm, because then one glitch and your troubleshooting guide becomes a liability for the organization. The second one is AI tools are neutral. If only they were neutral, because AI learns from human data. It mirrors our biases because it learns from what is fed into it. So like um, it assumes that all users are pro users. This sometimes leads to the docs excluding half of the audience because most of us, we like to experiment and learn along the way. Um, it's not just a legal box to tick, my friends. Sure, compliance matters, but ethics is like the heartbeat. It is what ensures that our documentation, it builds trust and not erode it. Skip it and you are not just risking fines, but you're also losing users who will feel unseen, right? It's also not just another part of the workflow, actually quite the opposite of it. Proactive checks can catch errors early. We will save also on the revision time. And I've seen teams cut support tickets by as much as 25% with simple audits. Following AI ethics, it only boosts adoption. It does not erode it, right? Because it helps build trust among our customers and prospects. Oftentimes we as tech writers, we don't get to think much about our prospects, do we? Um, Share that in the comment. And I think the last one, small teams, they don't need, I disagree. Uh, if anything, even solo writers would benefit from these guidelines because even if you were to scale it down to a checklist, uh, you would protect yourself from surprises. With the assumptions out of the way, let's look at the acronym that I had promised to you about. The acronym is called FEBRICOT, FEBRICOT, and throughout this presentation, I'll explain each one of those letters in detail. So then, Preeti, next slide, please. We look at F, which stands for fair. The point is, we have to ensure equitable outcomes in our AI-generated documentation. It's like balancing examples for all users. And let me tell you why I say that. Unfair AI, it perpetuates disparities. It erodes trust, and we've talked about trust before. And it also erodes adoption in diverse audience. Think about it like a global team. But the experience and preference in this case would be lopsided toward one group where the experience of it will dominate the others, and you don't want that. Um, you know, let's picture this with an example. A fintech startup, it used AI to draft its loan guides. Then it pulled its examples from the urban data. Therefore, its scenarios featured the city dwellers, not the ones who live in tier 3 or 4 small towns. Basically, their AI considered all the scenarios of only those who have access to smart devices. All right. Therefore, it relied on an ecosystem of applications for a smoother user experience. What happened was that the AI ignored rural farmers who still relied on SMS for authentication. And then what happened on the launch day? Against the estimates that they set for themselves, the organization reported an engagement drop of around 20% in non-urban markets because of the frustration amongst users. It also forced the development team to then fully rewrite the code to take into account the larger, more accurate set of users. The learning here for us as tech writers is to audit the AI output for fairness and to create a truly user-centric experience in terms of documentation. We can start with a quick persona check, for example, in our next drafts, right? Preeti, next slide, please. Awesome. So E is for ethical. We must prioritize moral integrity in AI use. It's beyond all rules. It's like avoiding harm in documentation content. And why I say that is because ethical lapses, they damage the reputation. Um, it also puts users' safety at risk, especially in sensitive areas like troubleshooting guides. Now, you might ask, what is the difference between fair and ethical? For me, the way I have seen it so far, analyzed it so far, is that The difference is in terms of the application. Fairness is at the basic level, but ethical behavior is much broader term. And I'll tell you why I say that. There was this health tech firm when I was researching about this presentation. I came across this example. This health tech firm, it used AI to automate the pacemaker instructions, um, and it was eager to ship its product. So it skipped reviews. Then the output, it emitted a critical warning about battery replacement. And then 3, 4, 5 months down the line, patients, they reported errors in the instructions, and some of them even had to, it led to emergency medical assistance calls, product recalls, headlines, and lawsuits. During this whole time, the company lost a lot of users, it lost a lot of revenue also. But the learning for us is that we must embed ethical reviews in our documentation cycles, something that can align AI with human values. And human values, at the end of the day, it's extremely important, despite how you look at it in terms of quantifying your content based on data or information that is fed to the AI. It'll be the human emotions that will govern the result or impact of your documentation. I can understand that some of you might think that this is more to do with technical reviews, right? It was because of the reviews that weren't conducted that the organization faced problem. But believe me, someone's life, I think, is above and beyond all technical reviews or meeting the product's shipment deadline. It doesn't matter. Regardless of how you classify this, the reviews remain a non-negotiable step, just like, spell check. Next slide, please. Awesome. Bias free. Okay. Bias free, as a definition, it eliminates prejudices from AI content. For example, it can be gender biases or racial biases that alienate users or trigger specific versions. It's a costly affair. Uh, Now, once again, the curious ones amongst you, you might think, what is the difference between fairness and bias free, right? You might ask, what is the difference between fairness and bias free? Bias free is, it addresses input level issues. For example, skewed data. And I'll tell you why I say that. I've got a very good example for that. Whereas fairness, it deals more with the output based disparities to prevent the eroding trust. Okay, bias freeness, it might remove gender stereotype from code examples. And fairness, it's more to do with beginners and expert level users um, facing the same level or same version or same experience of the product. Um, there was a developer that created a facial recognition software somewhere in the northern part of the globe. Now, to ensure that there was greater accuracy in his model, he trained the AI engine on several faces. The one thing that he did not consider was including faces from other continents, faces with racial, ethnic, or geographical variations. The outcome was that when the software was released, it recognized everyone from the African continent as gorillas. The biased judgment here from AI, it was unforeseen and unaccounted for. So the learning for us here, bias audits and diverse data sets can help us produce more neutral, accurate documentation. Tools, there are tools here that are available for us. There is community platform like Hugging Face, where you've got, I think, close to 4.5 lakh tools now. And it's just a 5-minute habit that you can incorporate in your everyday job, where you can make sure that your content is bias free before it is released. Preeti, next slide, please. Okay, so R is for robustness. We've covered F, E, B. Now we are on R. One thing that we can ensure is to build reliable AI system that handles edge cases like error proofing our documentation generation. Fragile AI, it breeds inaccuracies, which in turn it spikes support cases, support needs, and it also obviously leads to user frustration. I've got a very good real life example for this. There was a startup that rushed AI for its API troubleshooting guide. It used AI for that. Um, the API guide in it worked good for general standard queries, but it crumbled in rare error scenarios. And then the consequence of it was that the users, they flooded the ticketing system, which then led to a surge in the reported tickets by as much as somewhere around 30%, and the organization lost close to 20,000 US dollars in fixing this miss. The learning summary for us here is that we should test AI rigorously for robustness to ensure that we get dependable output. We must rely also on creating prototypes with what if scenarios that can help us before we go live. If I were to foresee the way ahead for us, and this is probably one of the most important slides here, the way I foresee the way ahead for us is, I think, I would choose to invest in an AI platform which is robust in the sense that it is sustainable in nature and it leaves very little, if any, impact um, to the environment. That would be the real robustness and power of tools for us. Next slide, please. Okay. Uh, we must make sure that our documentation is inclusive. And I'm sure we all come across examples related to lack of inclusivity across our daily lives as tech writers. Examples can be from multilingual, disability-friendly formats, or there are there. This slide has endless examples. Um, there was this and one edtech education technology organization. It used AI to generate course overviews. So then in those course overviews, it also included screenshots. The problem was that AI did not provide alt text for those screenshots. And consequently, when the courses were released, the visually impaired students, they found it difficult to understand the overview, to understand the courses in detail. And that resulted in a significant drop in the number of users for that course. Again, these are very simple real life examples, and we can draw our own conclusions from it. But the point that I want to bring here is that uh, we must integrate inclusive design uh, to broaden our customers' impact. It's more fulfilling that way, right? So we've covered FEB, RI. The next one should be C. Next slide, please. This one should be easier for all of us. We know that we must adhere to laws and standards like we have now GDPR and ISO and HIPAA. Non-compliance, it invites simple fines, and it might also result in launch delays. One simple example that I recall is of that of choosing between the words avoid and prevent. For those of you who dealt with simplified technical English, ASD, ST 100, they might recall that one word is preferred over the other, right? And think about it this way. There are so many words in the English language, and yet ASD, STE 100, it has an acceptable vocabulary of only around 900 words, which is kind of surprising. What it tells us is that both native and non-native speakers, non-native English speakers included, the set of acceptable vocabulary that makes information dissemination easier is a lot shorter than we expect. I recall an example of a fintech firm that used AI to auto-generate compliance reports, and the reports, for some reason, were never audited, and consequently, the organization failed ISO checks. And the result was that the organization had to spend additional 75,000 US dollars in redemption. The takeaway for us: align your documentation with AI. Performing simple audits can help us achieve seamless compliance. It can be as simple as logging prompts and tracking versions and changes, right? Next slide, please. Ooh, okay. O is for openness. It prompts OpenAI practices like sharing methodologies across documentation teams, across teams outside of documentation as well. Openness fosters collaboration, it fosters innovation, it dodges secrecy pitfalls. No one who has ever worked, operated in silos has grown beyond a certain limit. That's my personal opinion. There was a Fortune 500 firm where people used to work in siloed AIs, and it resulted in duplicate error mechanism. And when they finally discovered it, they wasted close to 60% of their future sprints in fixing that problem. So then sometimes the impact is not only financial, it's also emotional, it's also in terms of the effort that is involved. I would recommend that we promote a culture of openness and secrecy at the same time. You might think that it is counterintuitive, but see, believe me, sharing is caring, but sharing without caring is a plain simple violation. What it means is we have to ensure that what goes into the application is also vetted, and what comes out of the ecosystem is also vetted equally. It cannot be any more simpler than that. And with that, we come to the last slide here. We've covered FEBRICO, and now for transparency. We must ensure that we create clear accountability by disclosing what part of our content is AI generated, what part of our content is not AI generated. Uh, we must label AI generated content transparently. You can add footnotes also. For example, you can say it's AI assisted, but it is reviewed by humans. Wherever possible, you can choose to add these labels. Since the content is AI generated anyway, you cannot guarantee its authenticity, or you cannot guarantee how the AI has interpreted the data that is fed into it. So it's always one of the best practices. Um, Next slide, please. Now we've covered, so far in the presentation, we've covered the assumptions. We've looked at the acronym, which can be used as a framework. So Fabricot there unpacked for you. Uh, it can be your all-in-one checklist. Fair, ethical, bias-free, robust, inclusive, compliant, open, transparent. I would suggest you rather discuss it with your product team, bring it up to them to avoid deviations, share it with them with the examples so that they know why adhering to it matters. I would also suggest you try bias checkers on community platform like Hugging Face. As I said, the last I checked, it had close to 4,65,000 models there available for us. And it continues to grow day by day. Sometime back when we checked, it was around 2,70,000, something like that. And it continues to grow. And then there are also AI ethics certifications that are available on the market. There's one from EU, because EU Act is being updated. There's one by IEEE, which is called Certif AI. That's a very good, memorable acronym. There's one by University of Tokyo. It's on edX. I think edX also has one on ethics and governance. No, ethics and governance is by University of Tokyo, and only on ethics certification is by the University of British Columbia. In the next 4 or 5 years, getting yourself some kind of compliance check or some kind of certification in ethics, I think it's going to be a good game changer for us. Next slide, please. I think the next slide just covers some of the references from where I've gathered this information. But before I close this presentation, I want to go back for a split second to where we started. Some of you might think that we've talked about ethics in great detail, and I understand this is a much broader concept. But why are we talking about responsible AI, right? If I read minds here correctly, I think some of you might have that question. And I think there's no better place to talk about it than here in the concluding slides, one or two last slides here. Ethical AI, it provides foundation. It's about what, without specifying any enforcement. Whereas responsible AI is about how, the process, the metrics is, right? It's a much broader term than just ethical AI because it also includes actionable items for us to mitigate the risks involved, mitigate any biases or harms that might be involved. It has an all-encompassing thought, which is why I think it's important for us to talk about responsible AI than only ethical AI. Next slide, please. With that, I think I'll conclude the presentation. Um, Before we open up for any questions that you guys might have, I want to know if you guys have any preferred point from this Febricot, FEBRICOT, the one that we've shared here. And with that, I think we can take up questions also.
Not a question to you, but in the chat, this is Aman here. In the
Yes,
chat,
please.
I've also shared more information about the ISO 42001 standard, which is the ISO standard for governing AI management across organizations. And I think it would be actually interesting to read the document and understand the ethical implications and the other
True,
areas which this ISO governs. I think companies and organizations are moving towards getting this ISO certification, so it
true,
might
true.
actually be helpful. Yeah,
Excellent input, Aman. I cannot agree more with you. Thank you for bringing it here.
sure.
Preeti, are there any questions for us?
Uh, I think Aman has answered most of the questions that people asked.
Awesome, Aman. Thank you for stepping in for us.
If any of you have any more questions, you can put in the chat.
I think there is
We
one
can
question,
contact you.
Priti, by Shrikant. What risks do you think are most critical if AI tools don't meet regulatory requirements?
All of them. It's always good to be on the safer side. See, we don't know everything and we don't claim to know everything, but the way in which our users interpret our documentation, the way in which they like to use it, we can't guarantee those ways, right? It's good to be on the safer side. If you can come up with ways in which you can reduce those risks, why not?
And there is one point from Deepti, which I think, Suyog, you may just simplify. It's a very valid question for people who are not so technical. She says this might seems like a whole lot. As a tech
It does,
writer,
it
where
is,
does
yes.
one start?
That is such an interesting question. Uh, there are so many things that you can do to begin with. Uh, See, you might remember that there are a couple of things that you can do to begin with. Ensure what goes into the AI, what is fed into it, and what comes out of it. Try and verify all of that. That's the first thing that you can do. Then the examples that I've shared in the presentation so far, you label your AI generated content. You make sure that you have alt text. You make sure that there are compliance standards that are adhered to. For example, in healthcare domain, you have HIPAA compliance. In the other domains, it can be as simple as following ANSI's Z535 for that caution and danger and warning signs. You use high contrast and screen readability features. You use global examples. There are a lot of places where I come across examples like um, it generates the output, physical output of that machine is as much as three baseball fields. I can understand that it is targeted to the US users, but for non people, those who reside outside of the US, it kind of becomes a difficult data set to comprehend. I would suggest you use global examples. Then rigorously test your product before when you write about it. You are probably the first customers of your organization in a way, because whatever, howsoever you test, you will be able to document, especially test for the edge cases, which is why we covered that part also. Then also ensure that there is no sensitive personal information in those screenshots. Sometimes when you are creating videos based on how your organization's data is operated, taken from one place to another, you might end up including screenshots that contain personal information. That's not good. We've seen while researching for this presentation, I've come across examples where including screenshots exposed certain data to some users and they used it differently. I think it was some example related to PepsiCo. You might go on the internet and search for it. But I think the most important point here is to not lose your human touch. Uh, like I said, data is merely numbers. You have emotions, you have outcomes, you have sense of accomplishment, you have relief, you have resolution to humans' problems. These are all human emotions that cannot be quantified and that should not be understated also. Try to express those in words, try and gamify your product content, be compassionate and have empathy. That should help you resolve most of the problems along the way. I hope, I understand it might be a long answer, but I hope that I've answered it fully. Did I? I assume I did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, Preeti, so it's over to you.
Yeah, I think we are done with the questions. Big thank you to Suyog for an insightful and thought-provoking session on the ethical challenges of AI in technical documentations.
Thank you.
Uh, Hi, this is Danush. I'm unable to ping in the chat.
Okay, you can
Uh,
ask him.
yeah. So this statement, like data privacy is a myth, uh, and using content in AI for generation. So how will you? What do you feel like? Uh, is an offline model like? It's required for content generation, or what do you feel about it? These two cases.
I think that's a very good question. When you say offline model, I also gather that in some way you want to work in silo. I wouldn't suggest that. Rather, get yourself a paid version. Make sure that your data is not leaked. Make sure that your organization approves of everything that you are working on. Um, See, there are a few things that are understated in this presentation. Um, Always ensure that you meet your organization's BCG. Your business conduct guideline is how you will continue to operate going forward, how you should have operated until now also. So then I would suggest, rather than getting a siloed version, um, put that information across such that you can gather data judiciously. Um, because in the end, you are vetting the information in two places, something that goes into the air, something that comes out of it. And I wouldn't suggest that you work in silos. Otherwise, you might miss out on information. I might not be able to correctly articulate this information. If anybody else in the group can please step in and help me articulate it, that'll be great.
So I can probably put a sentence or two here.
Yes,
I
please.
think the statement itself, I would actually say data privacy is a myth. Well, it's not a myth, but it's definitely changing. It's actually shifting from being complete anonymity to being transparent, consent and controlled, right? So that's where all
True.
of these policies, all of these ISO standards are coming into picture. Now, eventually, all organizations will, move towards AI. So the data privacy piece will now be more controlled, within the organization. So I think it's not a myth. I mean, that statement is changing, is what I actually say in this era.
I couldn't have summarized it better, Aman. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the explanation. Yeah.
Thank you. So, thank you, Suyog, once again.